So 8, factoring by grouping. The first question is involving us finding the expressions for the possible dimensions of this rectangular prism. Now, it's going to be 3 dimensions, so that means you're going to have 3 expressions. So the first thing I notice when I look at this is that it has a GCF of y, so let's pull that out. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is the piece that I'm left with, I'm going to factor that. So I have my A, B, and C. So I have 6, 5, and 1. AC, or A times C, is going to be 6. So now I'm going to make my table to factor it. So A times C is 6, and B is going to be 5. So we want 2 numbers that multiply to 6 but add up to 5. That's going to be 2 and 3. And 2 and 3 add up to 5 and multiply to 6. So now we're going to highlight both the middle term here and the 2 and the 3. Because I'm going to replace this middle term with the 2 plus 3. So I'm going to have 6y squared plus 2y plus 3y plus 1. Then I'm going to put parentheses around the first 2 terms and the second 2 terms. The first 2 terms have a GCF of 2y, which will leave me with 3y plus 1. The second 2 terms has a GCF of 1. Okay, so now I'm going to take my GCF of 3y plus 1 out of each term and pull that out. I'm going to be left with 2y plus 1. Okay, so part of my answer is going to be 3y plus 1 and 2y plus 1. But we can't forget that GCF of y in the front, and we don't have parentheses in dimensions, so our answer is going to be y, 3y plus 1, and 2y plus 1. Let's take a look at the next one. The second one is asking me to find the GCF of the first 2 terms and the GCF of the last 2 terms for the polynomial. So, rewriting this, the first 2 terms are going to be 5g to the third plus 10g squared. The GCF there is going to be 5g squared. Look at the numbers 5 and 10. The largest number that can be divided out of both is 5. Looking at the g's, we look at the smallest exponent. That's the amount that can be pulled out. So the smallest exponent of the 2 g's is going to be g squared. So we pull out a g squared. So that's the GCF of the first 2 terms. The GCF of the second 2 terms, we have 3g and 6. They both don't share a letter, so we can only pull a number out. The largest number that can be divided out of 3 and 6 is 3. So the GCF of the last 2 terms is going to be 3. Okay, that's the second one. So for the next one, let's actually do a full out factor by grouping. So we first put parentheses around the first 2 terms and the second 2 terms. Then we pull out a GCF from each pair. The GCF of 12x to the third and 20x squared would be 4x squared. And that's because the largest number that can be divided out of 12 and 20 is 4. Looking at the exponents, they both have an x. The one with the smallest exponent, which is this 2, will be the one that gets pulled out, so 4x squared. And when we divide it out, we're left with 3x minus 5. On the second pair, we have 21x minus 35. There's no x in both of them, so we can't pull an x out, but you can divide 7 by 21 and 35. So dividing both of these by 7, you'll have 3x minus 5 left. And these are both the same, which is what we want. So now we have a GCF of 3x minus 7. Pull that out. On the first one, we're left with 4x squared. Pull it out of the second one, we're left with 7. So then we have 4x squared plus 7. So my answer is going to be 3x minus 5 times 4x squared plus 7.